Fantastic.
Well, I will call the Finance Committee meeting to order. Bill, if you can note who's here.
Yep,
From
full committee
Finance.
here for finance.
Thank you.
And I shall call the Personnel Committee to order. Brian, do you have the list of attendees? You're quiet, but I read your lips to say you have it. Okay. Well, first thing I have on my...
There, now it's finally unmuted.
Perfect. First thing I have on the agenda is minutes from the November 17th, 2020 Personnel and Finance Committee meeting jointly. Do I hear any motions from personnel?
I'll make that motion.
The motion being what?
Approval of the minutes of the last joint personnel finance committee meeting.
Thank you. I'm trying not to put words into people's mouths.
Much appreciated.
Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
Thank you so much. Do you want
For
me to call?
finance, no, let's just, for finance, is there a motion?
I'll make the motion to approve.
I'll second
the minutes.
Thank you.
So for personnel, all those in favor say aye. Aye.
Well, wait a minute. Don't we want to discuss this?
You're right. Are there any discussions or changes that need to be made to the meeting minutes? Thank you for correcting me, Mark. Hearing none, for personnel, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it.
For finance, is there any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor of accepting the minutes, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? The minutes are accepted for finance.
Awesome. Thank you. So the next topic appears to be authorization to fill police officer position. Who would like to, before we make any types of votes, I think, or even, I guess I would like to just hear a little bit more before we even make any motions.
Or do we make a motion so that we can hear about it?
That's the correct way. Fine. Anyone?
I will make that motion.
Okay. Mark?
I'll second that.
Okay, for personnel, we have a motion and a second.
For finance, is there a motion?
I will make that motion to authorize to fill the police officer position.
Is there a second for finance?
I'll second.
All right, let's discuss.
Roy?
Morning, or good morning. Geez, good evening, everybody. Hopefully you can hear me. I'm on my phone. So Patty Faust, who's been with the department since 1989, is announced her retirement. She's actually ending her employment with the city of Middleton in mid-December. And we'd like to backfill that position, which is fully budgeted in 2021. And we'd like to get our authorized staff back up to 39 officers as authorized by the city. So again, it's a replacement for Patty Faust, who is retiring in December. We'll backfill her detective position with somebody within the department, and then we'd have to hire a police officer to replace the internal promotion to a detective.
So Troy, let me ask you a question. Where are we with the school resource officers?
Yep, great question. Yep.
Do you have, is the school board telling you that you're going to be back in the schools?
I have not been told anything official when we'll be back. We're going to put out a survey to the community, to parents, and to students regarding the SRO program. I was told sometime after Thanksgiving, and then I was told that they'll be bringing back a revised contract to the city council probably in February. So that's the latest timeline that I was given.
So I'm going to ask Bill, when we did the plan for 2021, is the assumption that the school board is going to be paying the city for 2 half-time positions for the full year or half of the year?
We budgeted for about 75% of the normal revenue for the school liaison position, knowing that there would be some period of time that the position wasn't filled, but with the assumption that it would be filled at some point, and then for the next school year that we'd have some reimbursement coming in.
So we have an issue here because, right? So I don't want to, I'm not trying to pick on you, Troy, but because of the school board, we don't have full funding for those 2 halftime, or right, so 2 halves of an officer,
Oh, yeah.
right? And so if they do not fund, and I understand that, you know, they're not in the school, but your department really has, I mean, we made a decision to fund some of this, but the reality is that 25% of 2 halves is not funded for the year.
That's correct. Yep. Yep. That's a concern of mine too. And that is something that I wish I had a better answer for you, Mark. I don't. I can tell you right now that we are down already an officer that we're hoping that they're able to successfully pass the academy in December. But even if they pass the academy, they will not be out on their own until late 21. So we're running short. We have an officer in field training right now. We're never, and I think you've heard this from my predecessor, Chuck Falk, is that we're never at full staff, and running another officer short is just, you know, it kind of goes into some of the concerns I've already expressed to this group before and to the city council. Is we're getting to the point where we're really going to have to make some tough decisions on the direction of the police department and what calls we respond to. And some of the things that we've done in the past, we need to start deciding can we continue to do that? Can we do lockouts? Can we do some of the things that make us pretty special as a police department? And that's my concern, is if we don't fund these positions, they get further pushed down the road. We're not looking to fill this position. If we're even to wait till mid-year to fill this position, they're not going to be out and working the streets solo until 2022. But you're right. I don't know what the answer is with the school. I don't have a definite when they'll be in, but yeah, that is a concern of mine and my staff. Of we need to make up that difference of the reimbursement from the school district, and for a total year it's $87,000. And I think Bill and I, as Bill mentioned, I think we thought it'd be about $27,000 difference at this point, based on our best estimates.
Well, but from a staffing perspective, you're actually up 2 positions, right? That you didn't have before because you're not putting them in the schools. You actually have two additional officers that you can theoretically put 2 additional officers on the street.
Yeah,
right? Since they're not tasked to the school, you have 2 more officers that are actually doing other police work, other conventional police work, put it that way.
Yeah, I have one officer that is on leave right now. I have 2 that are looking to go on family leave here in early 21. So yes, on paper, it might look like we have those additional numbers, Mark, but we really don't. Again, we are never at authorized staff of 39. We're always operating below that based on injuries, sick outs. COVID has had an impact on our staff. Not filling this position will be a hardship on our department, but I understand the concerns. I understand, again, the reimbursement or the lack of reimbursement from the school district. But I really push to have this filled if we can. But I understand, again, the concerns of not being reimbursed from the school district.
I have a question from the personnel's perspective. So with a retirement in December, even if, well, I mean, it's already December, even if you were to announce a vacancy, if you were authorized, does it take like 3 or 6 weeks to get that out there? And then does it take like 2 to 6 months to review the list? And then walk me through how much time it is to like onboard them and then that whole training thing. Because again, I get that there's like there's someone retiring and there's an interest to fill it, but police hires seem different to me than like, say, a regular hire where you can sort of bring them on in 3 to 6 weeks and they're literally working day one. The police, you guys have special training. You have a certain cohort of applications. You have to meet certain specifications. So walk me through real quick that timeline.
Yeah, definitely. So we actually still have an eligibility list from our recruitment that we started in July of this year. So we can bring people in, we can do chief interviews. If they have the academy, we can start them relatively quickly, but they still have to go through 14 weeks of field training. If they don't have the academy, which the majority of the individuals still left on our eligibility list don't have, we have to send them through the academy, which is also a big concern right now, as a lot of the academies start in January and August, just based on the increase of the number of hours in the police academy, which is now 720 hours that is required by the state. One of the difficulties that we're finding out is that the police academies are limiting their numbers because of COVID. So the local Academy of Madison College is already full. They're not accepting any other applicants or recruits starting in January. But if we get them into the academy, that is an 18-week long process. And after they graduate from the academy, then they have a 14-week field training process with the department before they'd go on solo patrol. And then they'd have a probationary period with our department. So it's an extended process. We can't, for the most part, unless they're certified, hire them and get them on the road right away. But even if they're certified, it's a good 14 weeks after field training before they're on solo patrol, and we can count them as our minimum staffing. Excuse me.
But they're not on the city payroll till after they've graduated from the academy. Is that correct?
No, that's not correct, Mark. They actually, once they're hired, we send them through the academy and we pay them. It's a reduced rate compared to like a police officer one position, but they are still on the payroll while going through the academy.
So if the school, like kind of weaving the two topics together, if the SRO program kicks back up, say that there is a vaccine by April, May that's rolling out and school goes back in, if not September next year, where would be that overlay that would be acceptable? And maybe I'm talking more to my counterparts on the finance committee. If there's a 2-month overlay where we have somebody in the academy, but the SROs aren't out there yet, is that enough of a budget okay that you'd be willing to go forward with this?
No, I think the problem is that if the school board doesn't put the SROs back into the schools until September, that's when they start reimbursing us. So there's no overlay, right? That's the issue, is that if they're not in the schools, then the city doesn't get reimbursed. Isn't that the way the contract reads, Bill?
My understanding, yeah.
Yeah, Mark is correct.
So Mark, are you thinking from the finance perspective, if there's a training academy in January and there's a training academy in July, are you leaning one way? Because I'm trying to get people on and trained. That's my job from the personnel perspective. What are you all thinking? Because where I'm seeing is we're losing someone to retirement and it takes, 14 plus 18. Is that right? Is that 36?
No, but they're on the payroll. That's the issue, that they're on the payroll from whenever they make an offer, whether they're going to school or whether they're doing field training. And the issue is that I don't know that we budgeted this correctly for next year, right? Because of the hole, we're at least 47,000? I'm sorry, what's the number that we're missing, Bill?
Normally, the school liaison payment from the district is 87,000. This year, it's budgeted at 65,000. So,
Per semester.
depending on when the schools would be back and have officers in there, we may have significantly less revenue than the 65,000. It would depend on what portion of the school year they would be in.
Well, so that's the issue, right? If it's 87,000 a year, they're not going back to school in the first 6 months of next year, right? So you've lost, instead of the 20 grand, you've lost 40 to 45 grand from a budget perspective.
Yeah.
Plus, we don't know what,
I get that.
we don't know what the recommendation is going to be from the school board either. Once they get the survey back from the parents and students, if maybe they won't want one in the element or in the middle schools. You know, we don't know for sure what the recommendation is going to be.
Okay. But my main concern, I mean, I get that. And that's a valid point. My concern, going back to Chief, you were talking about weeks. Was it 14 weeks for the training? 18 weeks in the training and 14 weeks by themselves or with somebody, is that correct?
Yeah, the academy is 18 weeks and then it's 14 weeks with the field trip before they're on solo patrol.
Is that 32 weeks total? Anyone got a calculator?
Yes, that is.
Okay, so well, the reason I say it's 26 weeks is 6 months. So for an average person, like just listening to this as a recording, whatever, my concern is to have somebody up and active, you know, to be fully trained and a full member of in service is 6 months. So if they go through January training, they're not out there until July. And if we're having issues in the city and really the metro area because of COVID, I know my call volume is up 5 times. I remember next door, they had weird, you know, firecracker noises or people were concerned. And then we have car thefts and we have all these things going on in the county. There is push to make sure that there's public safety. So I just want to make sure that if we're running from the budget perspective only, that we are also needing to consider how long it takes to deploy someone, because that person that we're losing has been here since '89. That's a long time. They've got great knowledge. You know, they're a good resource. So we have to make sure that we continue that robust training and resilience of the police force so that we have that foundation.
Yeah, but we also have to make sure, to Mark's point, that we have to make sure that if the officers don't go back into the school, which there's a high likelihood of, then we don't even have that 65,000. So then where do we pull that out of the operating budget to pay for that? Do we have enough contingency to do it? I mean, that, you know, you're kind of kicking it down the road because of our unknowns.
Are you asking Bill? Or are you
Yeah,
asking?
I'm asking Bill.
Okay, because I don't know. Bill?
Yeah, and I as you recall, the general contingency in the budget is only 50,000. You know, we reduced that from 100 to 50,000, so we don't have much left in contingency.
So we could potentially eat if the SORs don't go back into the school. And so what we're projecting as a 65,000, we're 15,000 over our contingency at that point. With that
Now,
one
if they don't
item
go
alone.
back at all next year, we wouldn't have that 65,000 in revenue, and that's 15,000 more than the contingency.
There's your rock and a hard spot.
Yep. I mean, I think I personally think we need more police officers. I do think that where we are right now, though, is I don't want to backdoor extra police officers in now with this position, or 2 positions really being open like this. It's tough for the police department, but it's also tough for city finances because yeah, we run the real risk of we just approved our budget and already going in 2 weeks later to having, you know, gone over budget already, basically, potentially. So I guess I want to state for the record, Troy, we're asking these hard questions not because we don't support you or the police. We really, really do and want to do more, but we just have to we have to talk this over and figure out what's the best path forward.
So I know I believe last council meeting, perhaps it was last finance committee meeting, Susan floated the idea of a potential referendum that's focused exclusively on public safety in order to raise the levy limit or for additional funds. I mean, I believe, and Bill, please correct me if I'm wrong, there is changes now that those types of referenda can go on spring ballots now instead of only fall. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Would it be too little time for us to consider something for April of 2021?
I'm trying to look up the timeline. I think procedurally there would be enough time to still get that in place. I think it'd be somewhat tight on the planning and preparation side, but I think it may be possible, but I'm trying to look at that schedule while we talk.
Okay.
Troy, how many do you have a memory on how many that were already Academy certified versus not Academy certified on the eligibility list?
If I recall correctly, there's actually no one left on the list that have the Academy. So everybody would have to go through the Academy at this point if we were to hire off of this current eligibility list.
Okay, so is there any interest? So obviously in the news today is some bipartisan work for stimulus, and part of that bipartisan work is money for state and local governments. Is there any interest in letting Troy move ahead with initial evaluations contingent on availability of funds so he can do the chief interviews and sort through and if we have availability of funds confirmed by the January course date, then we would move forward. And if we don't, then we couldn't move forward until the August course date for the Academy. But at least he can start sorting through who he has. And if we never get the money, we never execute the hire. But at least we have somebody ready and he's done his due diligence to sort it down to one or two final candidates that he could pull the trigger on.
Where are you hearing about the additional money for law enforcement? Is that from the federal level?
From the federal level.
Yeah, that got shot down.
This afternoon?
Yes, this afternoon.
Oh, okay.
Mr. McConnell suggested that he's not interested in that.
All right, I hadn't been back on the news since this morning, so.
But still, I like the concept, which is, can we let him work a list and then can we hold, or at least, say when that money is available? Because if we're down 65 grand, can he do that hire in April or May? Like whatever that dollar amount is, so that, or June for that July launch. Would that be enough? Because if this person has retired, we're not paying that person's salary for 3, 4, 6 months. You see what I'm saying? Like I feel like we shouldn't be saying yay or nay. We should be saying start the process, and when those funds are available, go for it. You know what I'm saying? Like, and the finance people can walk me through that.
Well, so
but I like what he was saying, which is at least can the chief start?
So the assumption is your assumption is that the retiree is off the payroll by year end, correct? As soon as we make a hire, that person's on our payroll, and the $65,000, the clock starts, right? That's the concern, is that if we start this process to get this person to a January class.
That's not what she said.
Yeah, so the contingency, and we did this a ton, federal government wise, is that, the start date is contingent on availability of funding. So Troy could go through his screening process. He could wean it down to 1 or 2 final candidates. And through that process, he makes it absolutely clear that, we're doing this interviewing, but a start date or even the availability of the position even if you're the final selectee, is contingent on funding. And right now, we don't have a window on the funding. And if you can't wait for it and you go someplace else, then we lose them and we got to go back and restart from the eligibility list. But if we can recoup enough funding, and I really appreciate Emily's viewpoint on that, if we delay and we accept a gap for a couple of months, we recoup the salary that Patty would have made, then we make whole that gap in funds. And maybe something comes through, maybe it doesn't, maybe they go back into the school, maybe they don't, but we're that much closer to having a candidate to rely on. And if we can't put them into the, if we can't start them until the August class, but we tell them, hey, we're going to hire you, but your effective date isn't until just prior to the August class. And if you want to go somewhere else, you go somewhere else. All of those things are things that we can do if we decide we want to do it that way.
Brian, you're suggesting go through applications we already have on file, not put out another job posting, right?
Yeah, because they had a great response. Not as great as they would have hoped, but they had a great response for the last.
When was that last posting?
That would have been in June.
June. Okay, so now we're here in December. And the likelihood of those, I mean, wouldn't a lot of those have already gotten jobs? And if they haven't gotten jobs, how many are going to want to wait around until April, May, a whole nother year? I mean, it just seems like
Troy can probably answer that better than me, but there are not a lot of police openings. And if somebody really wants to get into a law enforcement position with a police department, they are probably working someplace else, and they would accept the contingency and then continue to look. Maybe they went someplace else, or maybe they don't, but there just are not a lot of openings like this that are ever available.
Mm-hmm.
There's a good chance that the top candidates are usually gone. They're hired by the time we get to them if they're still on our eligibility list. As an example, the last hiring process, there was, when we came back around to the eligibility list, the majority of those candidates were already hired with other departments. So if we're waiting till August, there's a good chance that the top candidates will already be hired and won't be around to offer job employment to.
Chief, I have another question for you. Is when the school resource officer conversation started, it was a lot about reshuffling the roles in the school for like social work and more support positions. Would that be something that the police would also want to do within their department, given that some of the calls are better handled by someone with a more like a social working background or mental health background?
Yeah, that's another big conversation, and that is something that we're going to explore in the near future. But if you talk to a lot of social workers, they're also kind of reluctant to jump fully on board with this, because there is a lot of calls that law enforcement still need to respond. But yeah, that is one of the options. It's obviously a conversation that a lot of departments are having, and some of the larger agencies are actually implementing throughout the country. But yeah, there are a number of calls. There was a couple today that I thought that would be more appropriate for a social worker to be involved than the law enforcement. But again, that's another day, another big topic, and something that the school and the police department need to explore in the future.
And that's part of how I feel about when the idea of having a referendum was first floated, I think like back in April, that was before all the George Floyd happened. And now, if we were looking at a referendum for police only, I think we really need to look at, is it a police officer only, or is it going to be support positions like that as part of the referendum? Who else could we hire with that funds if the referendum passed?
Yeah, and I'd just like to remind the committee again, based on the staffing study, we're already down a number of officers. I think we should be at 41 or 42, and we're at 39. And again, we're never at 39. Again, I have officers that are going on family leave. I have those that are out sick for an extended period of time. We're already down staff, and by not adding staff, it just creates more hardship on those that are working, more 12-hour shifts, more order-ins when we have sick outs. more burnout, less opportunities to do proactive work when all they're doing is responding from call to call. And again, that conversation of what do we expect from the police department needs to happen, so we know what the community expects from us, because we can't continue to do the things that people expect us to do, the vacation checks, the vehicle lockouts, if we don't have the staffing to do it. My staff is going from call to call, and they don't even have time to take lunch breaks, or they're struggling to get to the restroom because they're so busy. So I just wanted to put that out there, that we're already down staff according to an outside consulting firm or a university looking at our staffing numbers, and not replacing this position just adds further to the deficiencies or the lack of personnel that we should have right now that we don't.
Yeah. Overtime costs are part of that too. So.
Yep.
I would just augment that point from Troy, looking forward into this next year. So the more hardship you put onto our patrol officers right now, even if, even well-intentioned by being fiscally responsible, may cause us to lose significant leverage and ground when we go back into contract negotiations, because we're going to renegotiate a contract. And if they have felt significant hardship during this year, then negotiations for us to accomplish things or to hold a reasonable rate for the next following years become compromised. And it could be far worse than accepting the risk at this point. I mean, if I was on the other side of the table, I absolutely would sit on that other side of the table and dig my heels into the ground and say, why should we not stand for a significant increase? You're not staffing us and you're not supporting us anyway, so we need something out of this. And I wouldn't want to go into negotiations with that kind of risk.
Yeah, I got a couple of comments here. One is that I agree with Kathy. And number two is about the schools. I have a date when they are having meetings trying to decide about SROs. I have to look at my calendar. So, and the third is for Troy, that how long does it take for you to put that list together? So may not be a bad idea to get a new list. And the fourth one is when you compare the Middleton police force to our adjoining cities, for example, Fitchburg, especially Fitchburg and Sun Prairie. And I think we are quite a bit better off than they are, but yeah, at least the numbers which I have. So I think I like what Kathy has said. I will talk to the schools and that when is that meeting, I will let you know about that. And right now I like to know from Troy that how long does it take for him to put that list together? Thank you.
Mary, are you talking about a recruitment?
Yep.
Like a new list? Is that what you're thinking,
Yeah.
Mayor?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
Well, it takes a couple of months. It needs to be put together. It needs to get approved by the police commission. It gets posted for at least a month. We accept applications. We're probably looking at least a 3-month process, and there's a cost to that too. I think it's a couple thousands of dollars to do a recruitment by the time we advertise in all the different publications. There's an added cost to doing another recruitment. So I want to, we establish an eligibility list for a reason. We think these candidates are viable. The police commission certifies this list. I would hate to start another list just because, or we're going to delay this list because of some reason. So there is a cost to that, and it does take some time to develop a new list. I think I answered your question, Mayor, but if you have others, please let me know.
Yeah, my reason for asking was that you were saying the people on the top of the list, they may have already taken the jobs. So why would you want to take the second best? So that was my main concern. So, and I know that it's between 2 to 3 months. So that was another question. So it is main thing was that, you were saying the top ones are probably gone. So they accepted other jobs. So that was my biggest concern. So.
Yeah, we're down about a third of the applications of 2014. And what we're finding out is most of the top candidates are all being sought after by all the local agencies. So Sun Prairie, Fitchburg, Verona, Wanakee, we're all after the top candidates. And after those top candidates, I don't want to settle just to hire somebody because we got to fill a seat. I think we have a great reputation, and somebody who comes in with great character, who's going to treat the public the way that we expect them to treat our citizens. And I think it's really important that they fit our values and in our culture of our organization. So we're very selective in our candidates. I've interviewed others that I have no desire on hiring just to fill a seat. And we're fortunate that we do get a large number of applicants, but again, we're down a third of the applicants that we had 6 years ago. And I only see that dwindling based on the current environment. And a lot of people not interested in getting into law enforcement, and I truly don't blame them. And just to follow up on Brian's point, our police union was one of the very few police unions that didn't approach me and ask for additional COVID pay and approach the city for that, changing their hours. They've been very accommodating. They have gone through a lot this year, cleaning squads and taking precautions, making sure that they're safe and our staff is safe. So I just want to put that plug in there too, is that our police association did not come to me asking for additional pay when a lot of other departments nearby were asking for that, or accommodations for additional overtime pay, working 12-hour shifts. They did not do that. We had a great conversation. Again, they were very accommodating. So I think Brian makes a great point. I don't see them coming and asking for a huge raise in 2021 at the end of the year, but I also know they've gone through a lot this year. And I think that will be a consideration if they're running short and they're doing 12-hour shifts and they're burnt out. There might be a request for a higher pay increase than what they have in the past. But again, that's speculation, but I do want to put that plug in there that department has, or the department association has been very accommodating through all this.
Troy, when did you say the class starts in January?
It's right after the holidays. I think Madison College was January 7th, but again, they're full. So we're looking at Black Hawk Tech, which is January 8th, I believe, but I'd have to look, Mark, for the exact date.
Okay. I'm going to make a recommendation that you work with Bill and see if there's somehow that we can scrub your operating budget to see if we can't find some other savings here. I know it seems like it's a third rail, but we've talked often about the efficiency of overtime. If this is something that you feel like you need to have an extra officer, then we probably need to start looking at that overtime budget. I'm not saying that you have to, but I'd make a motion that you work with Bill and find $30,000 to $40,000 in savings from your operating plan so that we can go forward with getting this position full time. Is there a second from finance or personnel for that?
Can I ask the question, is that basically saying it's an authorization to fill this police officer position contingent upon finding the finances for it?
I think it's more contingent upon satisfactory approval of the funding choice.
Okay.
Right.
Can I just ask, is that something the finance committee would want to have come back?
Yes.
Have a plan come back to the meeting on the 15th?
Yes, please.
From personnel, I would second Mark's motion.
And I'm sorry. So it's basically saying, yeah, we're interested in filling this, and it's Troy and Bill are going to work to determine the source of funds. Is that right, Mark?
Well, to come up, obviously, see if I can explain this. I think that what they need to do is come up with $30,000 to $40,000 in savings from their existing plan to offset what we're going to lose from the SRO program, right? So that I fully expect that we're not going to get any SRO money for next year, either because the SROs are not in the schools, or the school board's going to revamp the program. We already know that we're down 20 grand. I anticipate that we'll probably be down another 20, because I don't believe that the SROs are going to, at a minimum, I don't believe that if the SRO program continues, it probably won't be till September, which means that we've lost 40 grand, 40 to 50 grand. So that's what I'm trying to make up, is that we need $30,000 to $40,000 from the existing budget to transfer to essentially from wherever else it was into personnel costs, right? Or some other personnel savings, right? To be able to fund this.
Mark, do you want to feel optimistic and have them look at the applications they have on file now, just to get a sense of what they have there?
Yeah, I have no problem moving
Okay.
forward contingent upon this, right? If you want to say that this is contingent upon identifying the source of funding from within the police budget, that's fine.
Okay,
But I don't think that we should move forward until we have a funding plan identified and approved.
Brian, is that okay? Would you think that would be a way to move this forward, is to review those applications and see what we can find while
Yeah.
we're looking for funds? Okay.
Absolutely. My recommendation would be, well, Troy and Bill, look for the funds and realign the operations budget to free up those funds, that at the same time, Troy and his captains take a look at those that are still on the eligibility list and wean it down to some candidates that, if we come back on the 15th and they have satisfactorily met the needs to close that gap, that they can immediately reach out the next day for chief interviews for those candidates. I think that is really well advised to approach it
Yeah.
that way.
I wouldn't be surprised if there would be somebody who just really wants to get into Middleton, no matter where they are right now, so.
Yeah. So for personnel, Robert, did you make that motion?
I made it for
seconded.
both.
I seconded
Oh, you did it
Mark's
for both.
Mark's
Mark,
motion
okay.
for personnel.
Seconded for
Second
finance. then.
finance. Is that you, Dan? Thanks.
Yeah, I'll second for finance.
And Kathy, thank you for clarifying. I didn't mean to cut you off. I was just trying to make sure I understood. So thanks.
So for both committees, we're looking to look for some additional funds, and then also move forward with evaluating the applications. Okay.
Okay, for personnel, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
Could I add a comment?
Please do, Mike.
This is Mike Davis. I just don't know that there's been enough consideration of the effects of the pandemic on the police department, or potential effects. But, we're seeing it all around in terms of staffing. And I think you need to keep that in mind as well. If we're down an officer or two, that takes our staffing down from perhaps 4 to 3 officers on a shift. So it has a significant effect.
Mike, please, I have to interject. The same can be said for every other department within the city, right? And we need to be conscious of that.
No,
it
that's
is.
not true, Mark. No, it's not. It's a critical difference between public safety and operations that aren't public safety. Now, I think all of our operations are important, very important, but having officers on the street, on the staffing that you expect, most people don't realize it's typically 3 or 4 per shift. I'm just telling you that that's a consideration that you also need to keep at the forefront as you move forward on this.
Mike, do any of those extra costs, would they qualify for CARES funding?
There is no CARES funding anymore.
We do have the potential, as Bill mentioned at the last meeting, we have the potential for getting additional funds. I don't think we've heard back on that yet, Bill, but if other committees don't use their funds, there's potential that we could get back another 30,000.
It's a big if.
It's a big if,
Yeah.
right?
So what is
that wouldn't be for 2021. That would be only the program is basically over. So it's a question of how much we get reimbursed for 2020 at this point, unless there's additional federal dollars.
So Mike, is your recommendation then that the budget?
No, I thought you were going, I thought that you were going in the right direction with this. I like the way the committees are going. I just didn't think there was enough discussion of the effects of the pandemic, potentially, and actually on the police department staffing. So Troy's talking about trying to keep up with authorized staffing, and the difficulty of doing that and having, he called it sick outs, but the pandemic is a different kind of sick out. And I wanted to just bring a little bit more light on that.
Yeah. So it's okay. It's less of a change in the motion and more of just kind of for our consideration.
As a quick follow-up, Mike, I guess I should more say to the chief, has there been any quarantining of our police due to COVID exposure?
Yes, we've had a number of staff, one that's currently in quarantine. So yes, and I see that continuing into the future as it's getting more and more prevalent in our community.
Okay. Thanks.
I also think it's incumbent upon us to recognize that this is a bit of a self-inflicted wound with the whole SRO issue from the very beginning, and that this is incumbent upon us to come up with a solution, us meaning the general counsel and the police department.
Yeah, we can talk about that. I think the bigger issue is what you brought up originally, Luke, is that really the police department needs like 3 or 4 new police officers, and there's just not money for it.
Right.
And until we make that case to the public in the city of Middleton saying, up until now, we haven't been cutting police officers, although we have not been adding new police officers when they're desperately needed because of budgetary things. Now here's an example where we're literally saying we're struggling even to backfill a position that's, somebody's retiring. We're struggling to figure out how to fill that position right now. I think we absolutely need to make the case to the public that
Totally.
yes, taxes are unpleasant, but they pay for something. Is this worth it to you? And it should be worth it to you because of this, and this reason. I think that case needs to be started to be made now.
Yeah.
With
And
that being said,
to assist with that.
That's not what we're voting on tonight. Is there any further discussion on the vote at hand?
No.
Hearing none, thank you. Hearing none, for personnel, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Hi.
Any opposed? For personnel, it is passed.
For finance, is there any other discussion? Okay, hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? And that motion carries as well.
Okay, thank you. We're a little bit behind the 8 ball on time, but the next topic is authorization to fill parks maintenance worker position. Do I hear a motion on that authorization?
I'll make that motion for personnel.
And that's
I'll second that for discussion. Is it for finance? Is there a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second for finance?
I'll second it for discussion here.
is there any questions or
So
comments?
is Matt on the phone?
I am, Mark.
Well, I'll ask you the same question. What happens if you defer this until April?
I'm not gonna make any crazy assertions that we're, the reality is we haven't added staff since 1995 full-time city. The park acreage has doubled in that time. This is a story you'll hear from every department head in this situation. I know that. Compounding our challenges right now is the Oak Hill crew, because of the pandemic, we have not seen them since mid-March. And, we have 6 snow routes. They include a lot of crosswalks, interblock walks, trail connections. I mean, I know that's trivial in clearing snow from trails, but phones will ring, and I mean, that's the concern. And is winter a quieter time? You bet. Do we not have anything to do? Absolutely not. We stay busy. It puts back some of our work that we're able to get done in the winter, that when the reality is we don't have the time when the grass is growing and the sun's shining. So there would be challenges and impacts to our operations over the winter.
How long does it take you to hire somebody?
Because we have a current recruitment posted right now, if this is authorized,
our hope would be first pay period in January.
Matt, I know that I've seen the construction at, what is it, Penny Klein Park for the new outdoor ice hockey rink.
Yeah,
Is that going to be maintained moving forward by your department?
no, that's all volunteer effort.
Got it.
Is there further discussion or any questions? Okay, for personnel, we have a motion and a second for approval of authorizing this position or recommending the authorization of this position. All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? It passes for personnel.
For finance, is there any other discussion? Okay, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? That motion carries.
Okay, I'm going to ask for a motion to adjourn for personnel only. Do I hear a
I'll
motion?
make that motion. I
Do I
got
hear a
kids to chase.
Great. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Personnel has adjourned. Thank you.
Bye.
Bill, are we on the same call or we have to go to a new one?
Same call for finance.
Okay. The first item is approval of the minutes from November 17th. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second? Any
Second.
discussion? Any discussion at all? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Motion carries. Next item is audit of the bills. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion or additions?
No additions. I just want to make sure that everyone had the updated list that Jessica sent out earlier today. The total dollar amount should be $257,544.89.
All right. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Item 1 under resolution is resolution 2020-56, establishing the 2021 EMS fee schedule. Is there a motion here? This is consistent with what we budgeted. Is that correct?
Yes.
That's correct.
I'll move approval.
Oh, go ahead.
Is there any discussion?
Is it a quick question on that, Bill? Are these always reimbursed at 100%, these fees?
No, never.
No.
Never. Oh, okay. So it's always like, these are the fees, but then the insurance company has their own.
Yeah,
For
there's a,
private insurance, we do charge the full rate. For government programs like Medicare and Medicaid, we're required to accept assignment for a significantly lower total amount.
But even if it's the charge rate, private insurance doesn't pay 100% of this, right? Of what we're proposing?
We
But they-
do, from private insurance, do collect that. And if the insurance doesn't cover the full amount, then we pursue the deductible or whatever from the patient.
I know I hate to belabor this. I know we're running short on time, but do we have a sense of how that breaks down in terms of by the amount of time EMS calls, what percentage is private insurance versus government?
Steve, I see you're on. Is that something that you can answer?
I can't answer on the fly. I can, tell you that that information is available from, the billing company. But once again, I think, at this point, the budget is predicated on revenue projections. So if this doesn't get approved, then you have to go back and kind of rework the budget assumptions. So
maybe, Luke, let me see if I can answer your question, right? There's basically a percentage of revenue that we expect to get from every dollar that we bill. Yep. And it's an amalgamation of whether it's a government payer or a private payer. And so when we budget a specific amount based on the fee schedule, it takes into consideration that historical pay rates.
Yep. And
that's how we get to the revenue projection, right? Is there going to be a year where we're exactly on budget? Absolutely not. It's because it's a mix issue, right? Every year the mix is different, but we've been really close most years for as long as I can remember.
Okay, I was just curious. Thank you.
Is there any other discussion? Okay, hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 All those opposed? And the motion carries. Item 1 under agreements and contracts is collateral assignment of development agreement and municipal revenue obligation by Impact Parmenter LLC in favor of Town Bank NA for the Trotta development. Is there a motion?
I will make the motion for approval.
Is there a second?
I will second.
Is there any discussion? Larry, you've been through this. This is just standard stuff for real estate.
Yes,
Right.
I have. And I issued a letter or a memo, I believe last Friday, or maybe it was yesterday, approving it as to form.
Right. All right, any other discussion on this? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 All those opposed? And the motion carries. Item 2 is a lease agreement between the City of Middleton and Central Cross Country Skiing, Inc. Is there a motion here?
I would move approval of the lease agreement.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Is there any discussion?
I have a question for Matt. Matt, with this new cross-country ski in the bike park, there's going to be additional work for the Parks Department. How do you anticipate balancing that with your current workload?
Well, one of the things that has been added to the lease agreement transfers the responsibility for grooming cross-country ski on a trail on Pleasant View to CXC. So that one of the things that does is it takes something off of our plate when we don't have LTE staff. Bulk of our LTEs are brought in for the summer months when we do have the greater flexibility, and that the additional maintenance is really mowing the trail network on the Erdman property, and that's during the growing season when we have additional help and we feel can be managed with the staff that we have.
Okay, are they going to take over the cross country? They're not going to take over the Pleasant View cross country trails this year yet.
The goal is for them to do so.
So
if this is approved this evening.
Okay.
We've met with Jeremy, the golf course staff are on board with that. And it seems to be a good solution, as CXC has ability to groom trails outside of the normal work hours of the city crew. So there's greater flexibility on their part to be able to maintain those.
Okay, I just want to make sure, I hear you that you're spread thin, and I just want to make sure that you feel like this is something you can fit into your staff's hours. So thank you.
This is Larry. One thing that you need to know, since this lease includes as exhibits all these other documents, the documents are still changing slightly in terms of the exhibits to them. Nothing as to the meat of the agreement. So if you could make your approval subject to final legal review, please.
Okay, add that to the motion.
And a seconder agrees to that? Okay. For those in our viewing audience, the thumbs up.
Making sure they're just paying attention.
Okay, any other discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Motion carries. Item 3 is the donation agreement between the City of Middleton and Bolenbeck Acres LLC. Is there a motion here?
I'll move approval. Larry, is there anything else we need to add?
Same thing on all of these CXC.
Okay, subject to city attorney approval.
I'll second that.
Any other discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed, motion carries. Item 4 is a trail easement from Bolenbeck Acres LLC. Is there a motion subject to final city attorney approval?
I'll make that motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any other discussion here? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Motion carries. Item 5 is declaration of stormwater and access easement from Bolenbeck Acres LLC. Is there a motion contingent upon final city attorney approval?
I'll make that motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion? Okay, hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Motion carries. Item 1 under bids and quotes is award of quote to Daniels General Contractors for repair work at the Lakeview Splash Pad. Is there a motion?
I would move.
I'll
Go ahead.
second.
Okay, can we clarify that?
Dan motioned, I seconded.
Okay, all right. Is there any discussion here?
I have a question for Matt. How can repair work fit under park development fees? You have that listed as what it's going to pay for this repair work?
The park board has taken the stance that when we're doing replacement or upgrade, and again, I think this is a combination project of repair work as well as we're replacing, not to get too technical, but we're making it more efficient. The fittings and the fixtures are low flow. If you remember, the splash pad was installed in, I believe, 2008. It was the first outdoor splash pad in the state of Wisconsin in a municipality. They've made a lot of improvements and upgrades since that time. So part of this is repair, but we're replacing the parts that need to be replaced are being replaced from a high flow, high water consumption down to low flow. And the hope is that that reduction helps offset our utility costs moving forward as well.
So is this something that you would do going forward? Like we have swimming pool repairs? Would that be something you could use park development fees for?
I don't think that falls into the park, but because we've typically done repair and upgrades under the capital program.
Right.
We don't have a cap. Well, it's essentially what ends up happening is that we're using park development funds for
In lieu of capital.
Yeah.
Yeah. We don't borrow from it. We use or borrow for it. We use development funds.
Right. And this wouldn't qualify for capital funds, then, would it?
What we've done is we've essentially, Matt, forgive me if I'm overstepping here, but I believe this was part of the Lakeview project, right? We were looking at not only the shelter as well as the splash pad area in terms of what we could do to get it improved. Yeah,
the situation here is that a couple of things are in play. We're anticipating that the Lakeview shelter is I don't want to say how much, but we're under budget. And the thought was to use excess funds there to pay for this. It's kind of a critical piece that if we want to be operational in May, provided that we can open, that we get this repair work done now and get it up and running. So I think there was in an ideal world, I'd love for the capital borrowing to pay for this, but the reality of knowing how tight capital budget is, that the best way to move forward and get this done in an appropriate time frame was use of park development funds.
If I could try to address Kathy's question a little bit further, I think that the reason the pool probably would not be a target for park development fees is that developers pay those with the expectation that there will be park improvements that generally serve their residents. And the pool is for all residents and even for folks coming in from the outside. So it's less of a direct relationship with a development. You probably have a pool impact fee if you wanted to, but
yeah, well, don't get me wrong. I think upgrading the fixtures to more water efficient is a great idea and a great use of the fees, but I'm just not, I don't know if it's 100%, but that's just something I wanted to find out. Thank you.
Is there any other discussion? Okay, hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Motion carries. Item 2 is Pleasant View Road reconstruction geotechnical services. Is there a
Move
motion?
approval. Move approval.
Is there a second?
I will second.
Okay, any other discussion? And this is for who, GCG? Is that right?
CGC.
CGC, okay. Dyslexia. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 All those opposed, motion carries. Item 1 under ordinance amendment sanitary sewer rates. Is there a motion?
I'll move approve. Oh, go ahead, Luke.
I will make that motion.
I'll second.
Is there any discussion? Again, most of this is passed through right from MMSD.
It's all best.
All passed through. Yeah. All right. Any other discussion here? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Item 2 is update of route to recovery grant allocations and submissions. I guess that's yours, Bill.
Yeah, that one's mine. No action required tonight. Wanted to give you an update and that we've submitted our final group of costs under the Route to Recovery program with the state. We've submitted a total of costs of $365,282. That is more than our allocation because the Department of Administration that administers the program and the instructions did update and say that municipalities may submit additional costs over the allocation amount. They won't promise that those will be funded, but that potentially sets us up for additional funding. If there are other municipalities that didn't use their full allocation, the state's indicated that they may look at coming back and approving additional funding for those municipalities that have used their allocation and still had additional costs. Our allocation was $336,742. So the amount that we've submitted over that amount is $28,540. And based on what we've received back from the Department of Administration, everything has been accepted, indicating that they all meet the eligibility requirements. The ones that aren't identified for payment under the allocation for that extra $28,000 would be coming from the public safety payroll expense reimbursement. So essentially, if we don't get the additional funding that we submitted, everything on this list would be reimbursed, except we'd only have reimbursement for about $85,000 of the public safety payroll expenses. If everything is approved and we get an additional allocation, that could go up to the total of $112,939 that we submitted from public safety expenses. So at this point, we're waiting to get additional word from the state on if those additional costs will be approved or not. What I was anticipating that we would do is for your next meeting on the 15th is bring an item back for action that would actually go through and make the budget amendment and adjustment to show the additional revenue, and then allocate the budget across the different departments based on what was finally approved, so that our final budget will end up matching where these allocations were. I don't know that we need to take that step. I think that might be the cleanest. Otherwise, we have a lot of costs that are over and we have revenue that's over. But this is essentially the final list, and the only item we're waiting on is just how much of that public safety reimbursement comes through.
Is there any hope for a traditionally slow government response to this so that we can book this next year?
Actually, no, I don't think so. We've already received the money from our first 3 submissions. Unlike FEMA, this is one that's been going through very quickly. With our first 3 submissions, we got acceptance the next day and had funds within a month. It took a little longer on this final one, but everything has been accepted now. And I think because of the federal requirements to make sure the money's used by the end of the year, the state is trying to get everything approved and paid off their end by the end of the year. It will help us for our year-end numbers for this year of hopefully not showing as much of a deficit or even being close to break even for 2020.
Great question though, Mark.
Always thinking, Mike, always thinking. Okay. Any questions on that? All right. This is no actions. It's just a informational.
Yeah, just an update tonight.
Yeah. Next item is review of investment policy and authorized public depositories. So.
Yeah, this is an item we bring back periodically. It's good practice to review the investment policy, and this is available for potential action if the committee desires. There are no wording changes that we're recommending to the policy. The way the policy was put together, it provides a lot of flexibility. Talks about our primary goals of safety as the #1 priority, making sure that we are investing in safe investments to secure our principal, followed by liquidity to make sure that we can meet our cash flow needs. And then the third goal after those 2 are met is trying to maximize the return. It provides information on the standards, ethics, and conflict of interest for those that are involved in the investment process. It establishes that the city's finance director is the designated investment officer to make individual investment decisions, and then reporting back to the finance committee quarterly. Our list of, I'm going to jump to the authorized investments. Our list of authorized investments is generally defined by state statute. Wisconsin statutes are pretty restrictive in what investment opportunities are available. I would just note that we have listed in here that are funds that we would limit certificates of deposit to up to 3 years, other investment types, including federal bonds and agencies, state and local government obligations, to a maximum of 5 years. And we've done a total maximum maturity of about 3 years for several years since we've had this portfolio in place. And that ability to set up laddering over 3 years has served us well as rates have dropped, in that we still have some investments out there that are earning significantly higher rates than what you would get for a new investment in the market today. With rates as low as they are, I wouldn't look at going out any longer. And in fact, in our reinvestments, we've been limiting investments more to 1 to 2 years recently, rather than going out even 3. However, at some point in the future, as rates do start to move back to a more normal level, I may look at trying to do some additional investments out to 5 years and building a 5-year ladder just to give us some additional protection in times of dropping interest rates. You trade off a little bit there that you maybe don't gain quite as much as quickly in a rising interest environment, but given the impact on our budget when there are downturns, I think having that security in that ladder makes sense. That's really a future decision, and the policy as it's worded allows for those type of strategic adjustments, but just wanted to go over what the thinking and the policy language is. The one item that is a change is in the attachment for the list of approved public depositories. There's one addition that we're asking the Finance Committee and Council to confirm, and that is the addition of Bremer Bank out of La Crosse. Under the investment policy, I do have the ability delegated to me to add a new investment depository, and we have purchased a CD with Bremer Bank. We'd look for confirmation for adding them to our list and including them with the group that we normally solicit when we have investment opportunities. And then kind of as a cleanup, the one I am suggesting to remove is River Valley Bank. They have gone through a change. They're now called Incredible Bank. We don't have any current investments with them. We could consider them in the future, but it's not something that's an active investment depository, so that could be removed at this time. Also, not part of the policy, but just for your reference, I included this page with the colored bars on here, just to try to show in a different format the structure of our investments as we report every quarter on the investment report. And what I was trying to show here graphically is how we have our investments laddered over up to 3 years at this point. So kind of looking at each 3-month time period, what do we have invested to that period? And for this chart, I've put together investments that were purchased prior to mid-March of 2020, kind of pre-COVID impact on the market versus those after, because it's really shocking to look at the interest rates and see, a lot of the investments that we had purchased prior to March of this year are in the 2, a little bit more than 3% range. A lot of the investments that we've purchased since then have been around 1% or lower, and some of the ones from later this summer down to around 0.3 on the interest rate. We do have some that were purchased back in April that are 1.3%. We have a 1.25. Most recent one I've done is at a 0.45 for a term of 2 years. Those are certainly not great rates, but the local government investment pool is at 0.10. And from what I've been seeing from economists and what we're hearing from the Fed is that low interest rates are likely to persist at least through 2021 and 2022 and maybe beyond that. So we're trying to look at some opportunities to grab what yield we can and still keep within our diversified and safe portfolio. 0.45 is a lot better than 0.1, but that's what's really driving the decline in interest rates. And what's saving us for 2021 is having these investments that are still paying at 3% or more that we had as part of our original ladder. So if there's any questions on the policy or the strategy of the ladder, I'd be happy to answer those at this point. Otherwise, we'd be looking for potential action to confirm the policy and the depositories.
Is there a motion for that effect?
I will make that motion.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Is there any discussion? All right, hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 All those opposed, and the motion carries. Can you put on the agenda for next time some authorization for you to pay bills before year end? Since I believe what the schedule is, our next meeting is on the 15th.
Yep.
And we won't meet again until the 5th. So there's a long time in there that you may need to pay bills for the city.
Yep, we can include that in case we need to do a special check run.
Is there anything else that we normally do for year end that gives you authorization to just keep things running? Other than the payment of the bills, I don't think there's anything else, is there?
No, not that I can think of. Early next year, we'll bring something back on capital carryover for any active projects, just so that those can keep going, but we can wait till one of the January meetings for that.
Okay.
I just like to say one thing that Bill, great job in this investment policy, and it's good that you did invest some of that money early on at 3%. It's helping us now. So thank you.
Thanks.
All right. Any other things for next time? All right. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor of adjournment, say aye. Aye. All right. See you at the council meeting.
Mark, great job. 10 more minutes, right?